Baptist Church and Reverend Bullock. Please, let's put our hands together. I would also like to thank our program partners, National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Delaware Chapter, National Pan-Hellenic Council, DETV, Jack and Jill of America, Newcastle County, and 100 Black Men, Delaware Chapter. Let us put our hands together for all of our partners. I would also like to thank my team, especially the advocacy manager at the Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, Kobe Owens, for taking the lead on this event and doing an outstanding job. And lastly, let me acknowledge my board chairman who is here, Mr. Joel Coppage. Yes. And also any other Urban League board members who are present this evening. This evening is about serious business. At the Urban League, we have rolled out a national campaign called Reclaiming Our Vote. And one step in reclaiming your vote is to know who is on the ballot. Our vote is our voice. I will say it again, our vote is our voice. It decides our future, come on. It decides our future and shapes the world around us. To defend democracy, to demand diversity, and to defeat poverty, we must vote. And so I would just continue to encourage all of us in our neighborhoods, in our families, and in our homes. We must continue to make voting a ritual. It is appropriate as we stand in this religious institution that we make this connection to voting. Voting must be seen, in my opinion, as communion. If you don't do it for any other reason, if you don't do it to vote for a candidate, if you don't do it for any other reason, we must vote in remembrance of those who have died and those who have lived fighting for the right to vote. So this evening, I encourage everyone to listen actively and to be informed and continue the good fight, and let's march towards the polls. Thank you.
All right, I'd be remiss if I didn't say amen. You preached a word on that and you took the text. Good evening. My name is Dr. Nikisha Williams Bailey, and I am the president of the A. Philip Randolph Institute Delaware Chapter. Jen said everything about voting. We're not going to belabor that, but I want to thank my team that's outside. We have Tony, Kanisha, Miss Diane. Thank you so much for always coming out and supporting. As you can see, last time I didn't wear any of my pins, and I've got scolded behind the scenes. So today, I just want to acknowledge first and foremost Canaan Baptist Church, who I'm a member of. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pastor Bullock, for allowing us to continue to serve in this manner. Acknowledge the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Delaware Chapter. We did A. Philip Randolph. Also, I'm a proud member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, which is a proud member of the NPHC. And we all collectively want to make sure that you are informed, you have the opportunity, and that you vote. All this is great. The attendance is great, but this does not mean anything if we don't make it to the polls. And voting is very important. We are on a ballot. Whatever you are, whatever race, whatever ethnicity, whatever religion, whatever gender, you are on the ballot. Please go out and vote. And I'm a mom, so if you have a child in your house that is voting age, make sure they register to vote and register their friends. They can do it just as easy. They can do on Instagram and Facebook and everything else. They can go to vote.gov and register to vote. So thank you so much for coming out. My next job tonight is to make sure just some housekeeping. There's an exit to my left Also, if you go through the double doors, there's an exit to the right. Also, the bathrooms are in the hallway. And I think that's it as far as the housekeeping. Everyone else should receive the two-sided flyer. It has all of our candidates listed. You can scan their QR code. It takes you directly to their website, and you can find out more information about them as well. We also have 3 of our 4 candidates. Debbie Harrington's not able to be here this evening. She had a medical emergency she has to attend to, but she did reach out. She did send a statement that we will acknowledge, but she's not able to be here this evening. But we do have 3 of our candidates here, and we thank you so much for coming out. So before I get away from y'all, my next job is really just to introduce our moderator, Mr. Kerwin Gaines. And if you were here last time, didn't he do a wonderful job? Thank you, Kerwin. Kerwin is a dedicated and results-driven IT executive with a proven track record in cybersecurity framework implementation, National Institute of Standards and Technology, compliance, assessment, facilitation, program management, business development, and collegiate-level adjunct instruction. Skilled in collaborating with cross-functional teams to develop and execute comprehensive compliance strategies, ultimately safeguarding critical infrastructure and information assets. A forward-thinking leader who's committed to driving excellence in compliance and security within the public sector. Collaborative in nature, acting as a true enabler of the business and partner to technology and other departmental leaders and teams. Able to drive security outcomes through influence and partnership, and relentlessly focused on establishment of security-first culture. Kerwin has an earned BA from the University of Phoenix and an MBA from Wilmington University, where he's also an adjunct professor of cybersecurity and law. Kerwin is a seasoned political strategist and DETV host of the political show, The Agenda, one of my favorite shows on DETV. Thank you, Kerwin. He's a husband and a father and a proud graduate of my high school, Glasgow High School. G-High, y'all welcome Kerwin Gaines.
Thank you so much, everyone. I love that this is another great attendance. So please give yourself a round of applause that we have folks out. The candidates will tell you not all the time do you get a turnout like this, right? So it goes to show about the importance of everything that we're talking about here and the things that are going to be said. Let's do some housekeeping, as we said before we get started. I'd like to introduce you to our timekeeper. You will get the dirty looks, I'm pretty sure, if we're going over in time. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for opening remarks, which we'll go over shortly. 45 seconds to answer the question. 30 seconds for rebuttals, and rebuttals will be simple. If you feel that you want to rebut something that was said, just give us a notification. We will choose you, and then you will have 30 seconds to respond. 90 seconds for closing remarks. That's going to be at the end. Around the 45-minute mark of this, I will call, and this is for the audience, this is your guys' job here. The note cards that were passed out, please pass them forward, and we will get those so we can have those questions at the end. I think the audience last time did a tremendous job in their questions. I mean, tremendous job in the questions, and I urge that all the candidates, please don't take them lightly. We will display them afterwards, because these are the questions that you need to know. These are the questions that are affecting you every single day, okay? Unfortunately, we do not have Ms. Harrington here tonight, Dr. Harrington, excuse me. There is a statement that is prepared, and I would like to read that for transparency, okay? This debate was scheduled months ago, and the debate was confirmed and accepted by all candidates. Candidate Dr. Debbie Harrington is not with us this evening and wishes to share the following comments. I am Dr. Debbie Harrington, U.S. Army Colonel retired, and my deepest regrets that I cannot connect with each one of you tonight. I have a very serious family medical emergency that I must attend to. Still, I look forward to becoming your next Lieutenant Governor, and please visit me at debbiefordelaware.com for more information, to connect, to volunteer, and to donate. Thank you for understanding, and have a great night. Yours in the movement, Dr. Harrington. So, now that we have that, let's introduce the candidates. So for introduction for each candidate, we're going to consider those open remarks, and you will each have 90 seconds, okay? I think we drew straws or did, what was it? Rock, paper, scissors. Some were victorious, some were not. So, Ms. King, we'll have you begin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank you for taking the time to come out tonight to learn about the candidates and the choices that you have in election, because it does come down to a lot of choice. Many times in elections, we can be distracted by what candidates want us to hear and not focus on what's important to you. So I ask tonight and during this election season, think about what's important to you. I am Ruth Briggs King, your candidate for Lieutenant Governor. I have served in the legislature for 14 years. And ironically, I'm probably one of the only candidates in the state who has worked in each of the 3 counties in both the public and the private sector. I have a long reputation for honesty, integrity, and getting the job done. Character is not what you say about yourselves, it's about what others say about you. But I'd like to take my last few seconds to share this with you. First things first, and we've gotten off track on what's first things first are in Delaware. But as Lieutenant Governor, first things first means be prepared to be the governor should they not be able to complete the term. The second thing that the Lieutenant Governor is responsible for is overseeing the Board of Pardons, which is a very important role. The third is to be ready to lead the Senate, a group of elected men and women who represent your districts, to give them the due respect, the dignity that they have because you have elected them to do a job. And finally, and most importantly, is to be that ambassador on many issues. We don't get to vote in the legislature, but we get to impact some of the decisions and see that people come together. That's what I want to do, continue to work across the aisle to bring your issues forward so your voice is heard after you vote and not just on the day you do vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. King. I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. Ms. Walker, floor is yours.
The mic isn't, okay. Before my time starts, can we please, my name is Sherry Dorsey Walker. I honor my father by saying Dorsey Walker. Thank you so much. I
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate that. Thank you in advance. Good evening. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. I thank you, Canaan, my Canaan family, for having me, your daughter from Bethel AME. I'm Sherry Dorsey Walker, State Representative for the 3rd District. I previously served on the Wilmington City Council for 4 years. I served 3 full terms in the State House, and I served on the Board of Parole. The Lieutenant Governor has 2 roles, to preside over the Senate and chair the Board of Pardons. As such, I am the most and uniquely qualified for such a time as this. It was shared with me that a woman of faith, it would be very difficult to become the Lieutenant Governor in this state. I challenge all of you to let folks know that that is what we need in this moment. We need believers. We need people who know that you have to go to the rock that is higher than you. And so I ask you on this evening, you'll hear a lot of great ideas, but I have a track record of working across the aisle with Republicans and Democrats to implement change in the state of Delaware. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kyle Evans-Gay.
You did it the safe way that way. It's Senator Gay or Kyle Gay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kyle Evans-Gay. I represent the 5th Senate District, North Wilmington and Claymont area. I'm a mom, an attorney, an advocate, and I ran for state Senate in 2020 because I was alarmed at what was happening at the national level, but also disappointed at what I viewed as a failure of my elected representatives to adequately deliver for my community. And so in 2020, I ran for state Senate, flipped a district from red to blue for the first time in 40 years. In doing so, unseated a 20-year incumbent and delivered a supermajority to the Senate. And when I showed up things started happening, things that had been under-addressed before: gun violence, minimum wage, paid family medical leave. And I'm running for Lieutenant Governor to continue to elevate those issues statewide, but also because I believe that there are big problems that need big solutions, and that a new generation of leadership is prepared to build that new future that ensures equity and fairness for all Delawareans. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor, yes, to be the convener, to serve on the Board of Pardons, and to preside over the Senate, but to be ready to lead on day one and to take that leadership, that community-based leadership, through for the full term. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was the starting order of the questions. We're going to reverse it for the next one, and then we'll reverse it going back, and that'll keep the continuity of the questions going, and you won't see it as favoritism or anything like that. So my first question is this. As Lieutenant Governor, you're responsible for chairing the Board of Pardons, which was just discussed. What is your vision for the board under your leadership, and how will you make it equitable? That's the question. Okay.
Testing, okay. Having served on the Board of Parole, it was very interesting because one of the things you realize is when people get second chances, when we release them from the facility, how do we change that process? First and foremost, the process, it was taking a long time for someone to get an actual pardon. We can expedite the process because the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor can have a good relationship, a good working relationship. The next thing that needs to happen is working with our state, members of nonprofits and different organizations, so that we can ensure that people, when they get their second chances, they get affordable housing, economic opportunities, and they're able to don't recidivate back into the system.
Okay, there was our time. Senator Gay.
Thank you very much. I feel that as an attorney with experience in the criminal justice system, I know I'd be the first person bringing that experience to the Board of Pardons. And I think it's incredibly meaningful when you have been in a courtroom, when you have made arguments to a judge, when you have sat with victims and victims' families, and you understand that this process not only needs to be accessible and fair and equitable for the individuals going through it, but it needs to be respectful to the victims and their families who continue to relive trauma time and time again. It's our responsibility to keep the improvements of the Board of Pardons going. And as Lieutenant Governor, I would keep those turnover times high. But at the same time, you need to lead with integrity and thoughtfulness a group of individuals who have to be focused on second chances and true justice for those justice involved and those victims in the system.
Thank you. Ms. King, we made not a mistake, but we've given everybody a little bit more time for this. It should have been 60 seconds. So you had time to show off. So we can bring it back a little bit. We're going to give you the same amount of time as 90 seconds, and then, but for your remaining questions, there'll be 60 seconds. So that will be the delta moving forward.
Thank you, and no problem. Since some of the comments are things similar to what I would have said, I will just expound a little bit further.
No problem. I'm easy.
And with that, I think we need to back it up on some of the things that we do in Delaware. We seem to think that those who are elected or appointed to positions have all the answers. And what I frequently do is ask the people that are most impacted by those decisions. If you talk with the people who have been through the pardon process, or those that are hoping that they're going to be fully restored and how that process works, to ask them what they think the system needs. I would even step it back one further and say, let's look at the Delaware Constitution and look at the actual composition of the Board of Pardons. Several of the people who are on that do not answer to the people, so it's very easy for them to sit and make decisions when they don't have to answer to the people themselves in unelected positions. And those are just some of the things I've sat to and attended parole hearings and other things, and I think bring it back to the people and listen to the stakeholders.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a second part to that question, and I believe that will be for 60 seconds as well. We will start from the other side and go back the same way again, just being transparent with everything. State Representative Sherry Dorsey Walker, my question to you is a follow-up. Would you support adding non-state official seats to the Board of Pardons?
That's an outstanding question, and absolutely I do. Right now, the only individuals who are on the Board of Parole are individuals who are statewide elected officials. Therefore, there has not been equity nor access for communities of color, because you must be a statewide elected official in order to be on that board. Hence why I am running for Lieutenant Governor, so that not only will I be on the board, but I shall chair it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Senator Gay.
As Representative Ruth Briggs King stated, the work to do this is going to have to be a coalition building exercise. We can't do it alone. And so we're going to not only have to champion the cause of bringing people in who have historically been outside of the system, but we're going to have to be the messengers to the legislature and to the state and to the governor who would sign the legislation, right, to ensure that that's going to get done. And I think this highlights a really important piece of Lieutenant Governor's office, that it is our opportunity to identify where we can do better, where we can bring more voices in, but we can champion those voices and also take a step back and provide individuals who have a passion for this area, individuals who themselves have been justice involved, individuals who their own families have been affected by crime, and give them an opportunity to elevate their voices, whether it's in the process or on the board itself. There are many ways that we can increase the number of voices who are at this table.
Thank you, Senator King. Sorry, Representative King, sorry about that.
Obviously, my answer will be short because I foresaw the issue to begin with. And I think that's what you need, that somebody that's not looking at how we've always done things or the Delaware way, but has that vision to look at how it can and how it should be and how to incorporate the community into those decisions.
I like that, the Delaware way. I see that a lot. I talk to candidates, good and bad, about the Delaware way. It's not always the best way. But there are some things that are a very good way of doing things. My second question is in regards to healthcare disparity. The healthcare disparity between black and brown people and other racial groups is large. For instance, despite accounting for 28% of live births, black women in Delaware represent 78% of the pregnancy-related deaths, mirroring national trends. As governor, what are your plans to lessen these kind of horrific disparities for black and brown people in the state of Delaware? Representative King.
Thank you. I'd love to go first. I was appointed to and served on the Delaware Healthy Mothers and Infants Consortium for a number of years and was very focused on these issues. We did some critical pieces of legislation, but we're not done yet. It gets down to three things that affect social determinants. One of those is housing. The second is the poverty level, and then access to health care, and not just access. Do you have transportation to get there? I was very much supportive and helped work with Mimi Minor Brown on doula legislation because I felt that certain people needed extra help during the pregnancy to get them to appointments to help explain things. And so it's been something I've championed. In southern Delaware, we only had one OBGYN that would perform any labor and delivery in the western part of the county. And people in state agencies didn't know about that. We have too many silos. We need to break down those silos so that we can cross the spectrum of what's affecting our communities and providing not only health care, but basic other needs.
Thank you, Representative King. Senator Evans-Gay.
Thank you. And it's hard to know where to begin here because the disparities are so shocking. They have been so pervasive, and we continue to wonder why we have the disparities, and when we are not willing always to acknowledge that we haven't done the work that's needed. The work that I think we've all been lucky enough to, under the leadership of Representative Minor Brown, invest in the Momnibus and get that funding, but like you said, we need more. I have been, this is personal for me. I'm an IVF patient. I was someone who had a traumatic birth, but I never in that situation had to wonder whether the doctor was questioning my pain. Black moms have that problem. And we need to fix both the way that medicine is practiced and the supports that moms have throughout the process and postpartum. That's why I was incredibly honored to sponsor legislation for prenatal and postnatal maternal mental health, because we lose too many moms in the first year of motherhood, and because the disparities persist even in that first year. Redirecting money to help those moms is one of the things I'm most proud of in my service.
Thank you. Representative Dorsey Walker.
Thank you. Having served as a co-prime sponsor on the legislation with Representative Melissa Biner Brown as it pertains to Black women and maternal health, I must say that it is a scary thing for Black women when we go to the hospitals, because a lot of times we're not understood, we're ignored, and when we say that we have pain, no one really wants to pay attention to us. Many Black women, when we go to the hospital to have a baby, we should not be concerned about not being able to come home to be able to raise our children, and that exists in the state of Delaware. And so what we must do is, one, start listening to Black women. When we tell you we have an issue, listen to us. Number two, be respectful. Sometimes the bedside manner isn't what it should be when we're in the hospital. And three, ensure that we are not only listening, but paying attention and finding solutions to these problems in Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex.
You have a rebuttal? Just as a reminder, your rebuttal is set for, because this is the first one, sorry. Your rebuttal is set for 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, when we talk about what's happening in maternal health, and we're talking about our Black and minority communities, we also need to remember the Black and brown communities. I represent a significant Latino population in Sussex County, 23%, and they face some of the very same challenges in addition to language barriers that they have to overcome. And so sometimes they're very much discounted and they're forgotten about. And as your Lieutenant Governor, I would remember all that are in this same kind of challenging situation.
Thank you. For the next question. Hello? There we go. For the next question, as Lieutenant Governor, I think it's great that all of you have spent time in Dover currently and know the ins and outs, and you don't have to try to figure it out once you get into office. So I think that's something great that you all bring. But what would you say your greatest accomplishment was or is, and how will you use your relationships to continue to move policy even though you can only vote if it's a tie as Lieutenant Governor? Yeah.
I didn't get to go first, so I'm happy to. Thank you. Can you just repeat the question one more time?
No problem. All of you have spent time in the General Assembly. What would you say your greatest accomplishment was, and how will you use your relationships to continue to move policy even though you can only vote if it's a tie?
Fantastic, thank you. I am incredibly proud of the voting rights work that we have done in Dover. My very first bill, SB 5, was automatic voter registration, and since that has gone into effect, 49,000 additional voter registrations in our state. This electorate will be the most numerous and diverse that we've had, because we are making a simple step to let people be automatically registered. In that role, I have worked on vote by mail. Now, the Supreme Court disagreed, but the work continues because we know that voting should be easy and accessible as well as safe and secure. And this year in particular, I was able to work on restoration of rights for previously incarcerated citizens. That's next on the list to get done, so keep that in your mind. Leveraging relationships means acting like a democratic trifecta. I have excellent relationships in both the House and Senate. Being in that Senate is not just sitting up on the dais, it's being in the pit with everybody and making sure we're working together to put the administration forward.
Thank you.
One of my greatest accomplishments is House Bill 195, adding body-worn cameras to every single police officer, and having relationships with both Republicans and Democrats. I sit up here and I call Representative Ruth Briggs King a sister because we both were in the prayer caucus together. In order to develop relationships in Dover, we must get beyond the R's and the D's and find out what really matters and get to the heart of the individual and the heart of the issues. And so there are several. House Bill 119, making Juneteenth a permanent paid state holiday. House Bill 198, adding Black history to the state's curriculum. There are a plethora of them, but those are the top three. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was honored to serve in the general legislature for almost 15 years, so I guess I'm the most senior person here in many ways. And sometimes it's not what you say about yourself. I was honored in June to have the House celebrate and do a retirement ceremony for me. And so I can share with you a few comments that I think are most important about working across the aisle, because what you do in Dover is what you do when you're elected in your community. It's about building relationships, and true relationships that are built on honesty and integrity. And so when I heard my friend Nnamdi Chewoko stand up and say, without a doubt, from my time on city council to here in the legislature, this is the best legislator I've ever worked with. Or I heard Mimi Minor Brown stand up and say that how prepared I was for everything and how I wanted things to be right, and I was the most holistic representative that she had worked with. And another gentleman stood up and said, who we sometimes were very odd about our agreement on things because it came down to values and beliefs, but he said, you are the most authentic person here. That's what builds positive outcomes when you want to preside over a Senate that is diverse with a lot of different issues, and that's what I'm proud to do.
Thank you. The next question. Over the past several years, the Delaware rental market has become increasingly unaffordable for everyday families. Many are struggling to find an affordable home and to stay in their homes. We know that building more affordable housing units is the long-term answer. However, that does not help families struggling with high rents today. What are your thoughts on rent stabilization laws that limit how high rent can be raised in a year? Representative King.
Thank you. So what we're talking about, rent control, which if we look in some of our major cities has really hurt areas in large because they become blighted by landlords who don't have the funds to go ahead and reinvest those in improving. And so when they call and say they've got a problem with water or something else, they're often put off. I think the best solution is to stop some of the things that we have done that have caused rents to go up, and to encourage, as I have done by meeting with different people, developers to go ahead and develop, because if you look, we're not seeing new apartments being built. We're not seeing renovation because we've not asked the stakeholders, what can we do so you can have lower or sustainable rents? The other thing is we need livable wages, because that's part of the problem, that we need to have people that can pay the rent and not be forced out because it's too expensive. In Sussex County, our housing situation is more critical than here. A single bedroom apartment, $1,200 a month.
I think we go to Senator Evans-Gay.
Thank you. And I agree that we know that cost and inflation is hurting families. And if we don't get a chance to talk about this, I'm going to mention that these same families who can't afford their rent also can't afford childcare and also have trouble with transportation. And so what we have to think about is holistic measures in order to help families afford the cost of living here in Delaware. We can talk about density. We can talk about building affordable houses that and rental units that individuals need, not just that millionaires can buy. But at the end of the day, when we need to come over the top, when we need to have effective measures, when we need to have flexible measures, and we need to have responsive measures, we will do that on behalf of the people. And so I think we have to, in essence, ensure that we are hitting the right metrics or the right levers in this equation. Is it one that is going to help families but hurt business owners, or is it one that's going to elevate all? And the job of the Lieutenant Governor, the job of the administration, is to lift all boats, whether that is through stabilization or other metrics.
Thank you. It's time.
I recently met with builders, home builders, and one of the things we discussed is you're doing extremely well up and down the state. But can you take a portion, just a percentage of the homes that you're building and make sure they're affordable so that our educators can live in the communities in which they're teaching, so that our nurses can live in the communities in which they're serving, and in some cases, primary care physicians in Kent and Sussex can live in the communities that they're serving? They told me they'd think about it. But I believe as Lieutenant Governor, I'll be able to push the needle just a little more to take the thought into action.
I think it's talking about maybe what you have done or what steps that you have tried to do to work on these issues. And in Sussex County, I brought in both the developers, the county and the state. Eugene Young came down to help me with the discussion to say to developers, what can we do to encourage you to expedite building for workforce and affordable housing? And they shared with me one of the challenges is that even before they start construction, they have so many regulatory barriers to overcome. And a lot of these barriers are inner cities. Seaford, Laurel, I don't know so much about Wilmington's restrictions, but they have had to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars before they can ever get to construction. I think that's important to note. And I think the other thing when we're talking about this is last year, if you look in the governor's budget, $25 million for housing. That was because I pushed, and in the middle of that $25 million was money to incentivize beyond expedited review for builders to build what we need where we need it.
You have a rebuttal? Okay, we have one rebuttal. 30 seconds.
Thank you. I think this is an excellent opportunity looking at housing to think about the larger problems that need systemic solutions, right? We need systems change in Delaware, and we don't need to accept everything that has happened in the past as what must happen going forward. Part of the issue is the affordability of moving into housing opportunities, and that's why I was happy to sponsor with the Housing Authority a rental reporting program that's going to help individuals who are paying their rent every month increase their credit score so that they can become eligible for transformational home buying experiences, small business loans, or student loans.
Thank you very much. Do you have a rebuttal, ma'am?
Thank you. As I look out at Representative Larry Lambert, he has a piece of legislation that will stabilize rents, and I'm glad to be a sponsor on that. It's so important that we not only look at legislation, but then we also have to look at our community partners too. And I mentioned nonprofits a little earlier, but ensuring that people have access to getting their credit fixed, making sure that people have access to be able to have down payments. It takes all of us to work together to ensure that there's equity and access.
Thank you, Representative Dorsey Walker. For the audience, this is the time where we're going to ask for you to complete your questions and pass them to representatives in the audience so we can have them for the Q&A session. So please, before we move forward, just pass your questions along. You can see the representatives here, and we can gather them for you, okay? Next question. Over the past several years, my apologies. I wanted to bring up what we were talking about in regards to early childhood development. Investing in the future early childhood. Delaware is lagging behind our neighboring states in investing in early childhood education. This is a critical area that needs immediate attention. How do you plan to increase access to early care and education, recognizing its importance in shaping the future of our state, especially in black and brown communities? Excuse me. And I lost track. Where do we start? Okay.
In speaking with educators on today, one of the things we discussed is early childhood education. My mother is actually a retired early childhood educator. And the most important aspect about when I take her to the store is people come up to her that she taught 20, 30 years ago, and they say things like, I remember when I was having a bad day and you gave me a hug. I remember when something happened in our family and you showed up. And so that's all I know, is to show up and show out. Not in a bad way. The interesting part about early childhood education is all of our children should have access starting at the age of 3. I started school when I was 3. Every child should be able to have that kind of access because that access prepares you for life. I know that if I did not start school early on, if I had just been at Miss Bessie's house or wherever, life could have been different, but I learned. Those were my formative years, and it's important that we invest in what matters to us. You can tell what matters to a state by its budget.
It's time. Representative Gay.
Oh, Representative King or me?
We're going down this way.
You said Representative King, so I wanted to
No,
make sure.
I said I didn't. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I'm incredibly passionate about this issue. If you are too, meet me in the back after this because we have work to do together. And I will stand on this issue as an issue that demonstrates the work that is possible and the work can get done when you put some moms to work. Up until this past year, I was paying more than my mortgage for childcare for 2 little babies who need that education, deserve that education, need that head start. Every one of our children in Delaware deserve that. Early childhood education is about small businesses too. My grandmother started an early childhood education center out of her house when she moved to this country in the 50s. She could take care of my mom and support her family. You have families doing that across our state today. It's also about educators and the investments that we need in, we have empty classrooms and educators, we need to fill them. So if you take a look, we have massive investments over the last 2 years. I'm proud to stand on that as the success that I have brought to this state, and that is the floor moving forward. We will continue to do that work on behalf of parents, kids, and teachers.
Thank you. Representative King.
Thank you. You show me where you spend your time and where you invest your money, and I'll tell you what's important to you. And while serving in the legislature, I have been trying for several years on joint finance to increase the purchase of care for families. And last year was the first year in many years we were successful in doing that, and they approved increases to that again this year. Parents need to work, and parents, in order to work, need to have quality child care available to them. And that should, once again, not just be determined by the wages and the ability that you're able to pay, because every job is important. Last year, we saw a shift. We saw that the oversight for children and for facilities moved to where it should have been all along, which is under education. Who better determine quality education and educational programs than the Department of Education instead of Children and Family Services? So we're seeing a shift in the right direction. We need to acknowledge those high-performing, encourage others to be high-performing. When we get a child reading on grade level by 3rd grade, their chance of graduation and success expands tremendously. But we have too many that we need to get before.
Representative King, it's time. Thank you. Representative Dorsey Walker, you have a rebuttal?
Yes. When we talk about early childhood education, we also need to be mindful that fathers are involved. We have very engaged fathers in the state of Delaware. And so often we talk about the women, but we don't talk about the men. There's a man right here, right now, who would take his lunch break every day and go to St. Michael's and read to his son when he had his son at St. Michael's. No one talks about fathers when we talk about early childhood education, so I'd like to make sure that we are inclusive of men with that conversation.
I agree. Rebuttal.
And if anyone wants to meet transformational men in that role, I would recommend visiting Kingswood and Mr. Robert and lifting up the work he continues to do on behalf of that community. I will say what I wanted to point out was the work that we're doing on the purchase of care vouchers. For the first time, you want to talk about equity. For the first time in history, there is an equal reimbursement rate in every county, meaning that we are no longer segregating Kent and Sussex in a way that undervalues the work that those educators are doing. And that is bipartisan work. Thank you for the work for partnering.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes left. I would like to give you each, for this segment, I would like to give you each a 60-second question that I think that you will like, okay, with the remaining time. And so we'll be as brief as we can, and then we'll move into the question and answer section, okay? And that way we're staying on time, and we're giving everyone a fair amount of time to answer the questions. The lieutenant governor is first in line to replace the governor. If for some reason the governor's seat becomes open, please explain why you believe you are best suited to step up on day one as governor. That's a good one, right? You guys finish out on that one strong. Where do we stand currently? I apologize. Is it back to you? Representative King.
Thank you. I feel I'm uniquely qualified to step in because I have led organizations statewide in a variety of different functions, and whether that be in healthcare and education. I was a Teacher of the Year nominee for the state of Delaware, worked in both the public and private sector. But I think what's more important is that both former governors Markell and current Governor Carney have pointed me to a lot of heavyweight committees, whether that be workers' compensation, tax reform, revenue generation, to look at how revenue is generated in the state, to serve on other commissions and things that are very important. Having served a number of years on joint finance and helping with grant and aid, I understand how the money is made from the revenue side, how and where the money is spent, and those important things. And I think I've also demonstrated the integrity, the leadership, and the respect that you need to have when you're in that elected office. And so I think these things have uniquely prepared me to represent the entire state, not just one interest, not just one group.
Thank you. Senator Gay.
Thank you. One thing that I know Delawareans are looking for, and across the nation we're looking for, is making sure that we have new and confident voices at the table. I've had a career before joining the state Senate. In that role, I was able to serve in the public sector, in the private sector, to work one-on-one with individuals, helping them navigate the legal system. Like representative, being appointed to important commissions to help guide our state policy. Being in the state Senate has given me the opportunity to understand, not just from the outside, but from the inside, how to get things done on behalf of my community, and now as I campaign up and down the state on behalf of the many communities I hope to represent. The person who will take over for the governor needs to be prepared, they need to be a good listener, they need to be a convener, and they need to go in with their eyes open that they don't have all the answers themselves, but they need to know how to build a team. All things that I have demonstrated across my career and that I will continue to demonstrate.
I finished what I start. I was on city council. I finished the term. I'm state representative. I did 3 terms, 3 full terms. As the member of the Board of Parole, I finished that before I became a state representative. The lieutenant governor, having to become the governor, you must finish what you start. You can't start something and not finish it. That's what a governor does. The governor, if the lieutenant governor has to take over the role, yes, you must be integral. You must have character. And you must be willing to work with everyone, representing all communities, and have a heart for the people. Hence why I'm running for lieutenant governor, to ensure that all voices are magnified.
Thank you. Was that everyone? All right, just making sure. We have all these questions that are really, really good. I just went through and I tried to find the ones. I'm not saying that your questions aren't good. If you don't hear it, don't wait for me in the parking lot. You gotta know where you are. You gotta know where you are. Let me tell you something about you. Some of the questions have already been asked, so I don't want to repeat them. Some of the questions are more apt to what's going on this week in our country, and some of the topics that I believe are important to our state that were not discussed in the previous questions. So that is the reason for me choosing those questions. If we have more time, I will ask more of your questions, okay? For the first question, there was one about, and I find this to be the common as I'm talking to, I just had a discussion with Charlie Copeland on the show last week, and we all said the same thing. We have to improve our schools and our education to have better economic development in our area, right? So if we don't have smarter kids, smarter students, they're not going to be smarter employees. And as a small business owner, this person is asking, like, tell me the plan, right? What is the plan that we can ensure that? And I'll go even further to say, like, what is the vocational plan? I think, and I'm adding to your question, I think that there is a vocational aspect that over the past 10 years has picked back up in our schools and has done very, very well, and it's yielding results. And some of our vocational schools are some of the best schools that we have in the state. But what is your plan as Lieutenant Governor to ensure that that small business owner is getting the best employee that they can get? Not only that, but as they become a larger business, they are recruiting outside of the area and ensuring that the folks coming in are getting the best education for their families. Yes.
I really appreciate this question because the economics of a small state are in our hands, but sometimes they feel out of reach because we don't always have the workers that we need. Right now in Delaware, we have 12,000 more workers or more jobs than workers looking for jobs. And we know, though, that we have disparate unemployment rates between ages and races. So that tells us that we're not doing a good job matching individuals to opportunities. We're not doing a good job empowering them to find the pathways to success. Operations like DSU's Early Childhood Education Professional Training Program are giving opportunities for individuals to fill the very need that we have in Delaware. We need to do more to connect those VOTEC schools to those opportunities of higher learning, and we need to make sure we're giving individuals credits as they get their associates, their certifications, and they move on and choose. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the building trades, and I know that is in part because I have made a commitment to working with them to reach students and provide opportunities for those students to get straight into work and straight into training and serve Delaware's needs while serving students' needs and options as well.
Thank you, because I know for a fact that if you have an HVAC truck this week, you're doing okay. You're doing okay. I'm not scared of any man. But if that truck pulls up in my driveway, I'm a little worried because I know that it's going to be expensive. I'm sorry, Representative Walker.
It's interesting when we talk about vocational schools. House Bill 387 came as a result of working with the VOTECs. 387 created opportunities for disadvantaged business enterprises. It says that if there is a state contract, $30 million or more, then there must be 10 to 30% of the workforce that are veterans, women, and people of color. We can all talk about the endorsements that we have. We all have endorsements, but the biggest endorsement is on September the 10th when you, the people, go and vote. So I'm looking forward to continuing the work with the community, ensuring that we're working with our VOTEC schools, in all schools up and down the state, because everyone's not going to college. But let's make sure that our children are prepared for the workforce. And so the VOTECs will always have my heart. Every public school will have my heart, because we need to prepare our children to be successful human beings in the state of Delaware.
Thank you.
You're talking career and technical education, you're in my wheelhouse, because that's where I taught at Polytech and Kent VOTEC for over 7 years. And I never let up that support from them either, because if you think about in Newcastle County, you're fortunate, you have 4 technical high schools. In Sussex, we have 1. They will have 800 applications each year, and they can take less than 200 students. Those students are being deprived of what you might take for granted in Newcastle County. But beyond that, I have advocated for increased apprenticeship programming throughout the state. We only had 3 programs at one time in Sussex County for apprenticeship, for journeyman, for a way to get from one level to the other. We know the demand. We need to fit that demand. And we need to also not just look at high school, but look at adult ed programs that can offer those who didn't have the opportunity. 600 of those applicants this year alone may benefit from adult ed programs and the ability to step through. You will earn more over your livelihood by going and getting some technical training than you will just spending on college loans.
And I really appreciate you bringing up apprenticeships, because I think this is another opportunity for us to think innovatively about ways in which vocational learning can be expanded into fields that we wouldn't traditionally necessarily associate with vocational learning. DOE currently is working on apprenticeships for teachers. And we need to make sure that we can give individuals who want to choose that profession, that public service, the opportunity to work and earn a living while they're getting their credentialing. So I think we can be innovative in these spaces and expand our conception of VOTEC learning.
Thank you. Just really quickly, when we talk about service industries, and teaching is a service industry, we need to ensure that when teachers come out from school, that they don't have $100,000 in loans. And so what's the purpose of becoming a teacher if you're only going to make $40,000? So what we have to do is figure out how we can ensure that when someone decides to go into the teaching profession, that they don't come out with $100,000 in loans, and that we can start them at $60,000.
Yes. I am not a fan of this, but I will bring up the question. I'm just being honest. Electric cars. And how do you feel in regards to the mandate? And this is a wave that's coming across the country, and it started in California, a wave of governmental mandate that is giving incentives as well as tax credits and some, I wouldn't say punishments, but disadvantage to those that are on regular fossil-fueled cars. What side of this practice do you stand on, and do you have any thoughts in regards to legislation?
I guess I'll go first. I agree with part of the sentiment. I don't think mandates work for a variety of reasons, the same as moratoriums don't. They show a failed concept to get the people behind you. I think what we have to look for in Delaware is, number one, let's be realistic. We do not have the capacity on our power grid to fuel electric cars. Number two, people cannot afford. I had a friend that owns a dealership. They sold one of their first EV Jeeps. The battery failed within 6 months. It was a $13,000 replacement, and they had to wait over 6 months. I also think we have the capacity in the cities. Where are you going to plug in? We then have the issue coming from those first responders telling us about the fires and the hazards that are related. I think we're moving too far on a concept that, and we need more research and development. I want us to be more energy sustainable and more conscious about that. But I think pushing something because it looks good is not the right thing to do. And couple that with the cost of an EV car. Many people can't afford a regular car, let alone an EV.
Hear, hear.
I think when we are talking about the advancements in technology, we have to look forward and not backwards. And so what we are doing as a state is placing the administration of this transition in the appropriate place, not in legislation, but in regulation. And so that we can be nimble and adaptive as a state as we build out the grid, as the technology improves, and as we move towards what will necessarily be a transformational change in energy, whether we're ready for it or not. That's why Delaware has secured Mach 3, and we are investing in hydrogen and other opportunities for clean and new energy. We have to remember that combustible cars were once seen as the wave of the future, environmentally more sustainable than the methane that was given off by the use of horses throughout cities and states in our country. And so we cannot look back and say that everything has to be the same. We have to look forward, give the government the tools to move us forward, and ensure that we are doing that respectfully and at the pace that the people that want it.
My mother turned 80 last Sunday, and when we went looking for another vehicle, she said, give me a car that has gas, because then I know what I'm talking about. I don't know about plugging in a car, and where are we going to plug the car in at our house? Those are real questions. And it sounds comical, but that's the truth. You already heard from my colleague about the EV. I'm not against it. If that's what you desire to drive, bless you. If you can afford it, bless you. But there are many who cannot, as was already stated. You can't even afford a 2020, let alone a 2024. So why would I want to put a mandate on someone and we're talking about a lack of affordability regarding vehicles. So let's be real about this. Let's be mindful that in the city of Wilmington, where's this supposed to happen? At St. Francis Hospital? And you heard from my colleague. I agree with everything that you said. You're 100% correct. We're on the same page.
Thank you. Additional comment.
Rebuttal.
Just an additional comment, if I may. Sometimes there's unintended consequences. And a few years ago, there was a piece of legislation that was to ensure that an energy bloomed in Delaware, and that was Bloom Energy. And I encourage all of you to go home and look at your electric bill and see how much you pay for that every month. That bill was passed. I was the only person in the legislature who voted a bill against it because I said, there's nothing in here to protect the citizens. There's no way to pull back. It was a multi-million-dollar investment that taxpayers will pay for no benefit.
Okay. The next question. This was the same question that was asked And I believe that I may have asked it or someone else from the audience asked it in the gubernatorial debate. But I still think it's very pertinent to what's going on here today. They want to hear your thoughts on the state employee staffing and the problem that we're having in regards to state employee staffing. Shortages as evidenced by the Division of State Service Centers and the Division of Social Services merger. Your comments in regards to that.
Part and parcel of the problem is we must pay people what they're worth. And if we're not going to pay state employees properly, they will find a job in the private sector. So what we have to do is look at our budget. Again, take you back to the budget. What matters to us? When you look at the budget and you see what matters to the state of Delaware, that's when you'll figure out we need to ensure that we are taking care of our state employees. And so often that's not what's happening. So as your next Lieutenant Governor, I'm looking forward to working with all of you to take care of the state.
Thank you.
I appreciate this question, whoever asked it. This is something that I have continued to work on even as a state legislature. It may surprise you to know that out of 17 or so Department of Education subdivisions, there is one that has an artificial salary cap in our state code. Those are the ones that take care of providing licensing and investigations when there are problems at child care centers. And 1 year, there was 30% turnover, people moving internally to other Department of Education opportunities. I filed a bill this year to fix that. There wasn't the political will to do it. I've consistently asked for increases every 3 years. You see consistently that we look to other investments than state workers, and we do not have the political courage to reimagine state service in a way that recruits and retains valuable, dedicated employees and rewards them for their service. I have committed throughout this campaign to reimagining state service and working hands-on within the administration to ensure that our benefits packages, our salaries reflect the expectations and show the value that our state service workers provide.
Thank you.
All jobs are important or we wouldn't have them, but there is an inequity in the way people are funded in the state based on the agency. One agency will have a collective bargaining unit go in and get everything they ask for, and another barely gets an increase. A lot of that is based on how many members and how much they can afford. Every job is important or it would not be there. But Delaware has a history, a recent history, of not honoring promises and commitments. You keep your commitments and you will keep your employees. When you start changing benefits or when the person gets near retirement and you start taking things away, that sends a message to others. Why would I want to work for you when you don't keep your promise or your commitment to me? Sometimes salary isn't the only issue. It's working conditions, it's broken promises, and it's not recognizing and appreciating those who are doing the work and the way that we need it done in Delaware. And so I think that's the thing to look for, is you look at funding, you look at equity and what we're doing and how we're doing it. Thank you.
Well,
Just really quickly, one of the things that I wanted to share with everyone is I was able to vote for the legislation to ensure that we protect our retirees. In addition to that, House Bill 448 is a bill that states that for your pension, for those who are receiving pensions right now, if you're 62 or older and you've been in the state more than a year, that we'll stop taxing your pensions.
we have another rebuttal.
It's important to know that when the administration started to try to pull back those promises, it was the legislature that protected the people, that stood up for the people, and passed critical legislation to enshrine those protections into law, and then overrode a governor's veto to do so as well. And so what you have before you are 3 individuals who have already demonstrated that, and I think it's time to bring that sentiment from the legislature into the administration, into the next administration, and I think you see people who are willing to do that on behalf of all of you.
I just want to add to that, as a cyber professional, I'm currently contracting with the state of Delaware, and this is the first time that out of my 27 years of work that I've ever contracted with the state of Delaware. So working with DTI, I have come to a few different conclusions, all of them good, okay? But I'm also noticing the pay disparity, and as legislators, I want to kind of paint a picture for you so you can take back to Dover and you currently understand this, and the people behind me and kind of testifying the truth. So I won't get into names and I won't get into titles, but there are people there that work 12 hours a day, honestly, every day in order to keep the network for the state going, and which are the people who are dependent upon them, state employees are dependent upon them, and state services are dependent upon them. Their salaries are, I don't even know how to put it into words, but they're not even comparable to the starting salary of someone that is an intern or extern leaving college, starting first year in the industry. And this is the salary of someone that has been with the state for about 10 to 15 years. Let me give you an example. They're making about maybe $50,000 to $60,000. Someone right out of school going into the same job in the same market on a commercial is making between $85,000 to $95,000 a year. That person is either going to leave, and that level of knowledge is going to walk out the door from the state as well, and it's going to cause a problem. There are several cyber threats for the state. It's eventually going to happen, and we need as many people on deck as we can. So I urge you, urge to work on this pay disparity in Doak. This question for the dais, I too have aging parents. With the influx of, and they're not here, so I don't think they're offended by that. With the influx of people becoming seniors, what will you do to help them? Medications, rents, transportations, and pensions. As you know, Delaware is a very attractive retirement area. I'm a Middletown resident, and I see it every day, right? But I also know that not all of those folks are moving here for the beach and our tax-free shopping. They're moving here because of financial disparities in their communities, New York and DC and all these other places, and they had to find a cheaper place to live. But once they've become residents, as we know, we have their responsibility. We have to take care of these folks. And we have to do outreach. Not everybody says, hey, I need help, right? So I know that we've been spoiled by having a lieutenant governor that has been in all of these communities, that has walked the streets in this neighborhood and in other neighborhoods and have done that. Please explain to us here today how you, as lieutenant governor, is going to help with that and some plans that you have in regards to hitting the ground running.
Well, I'm already doing that work. I'm sorry, I thought it was my turn. Okay. I'm already doing that work. I actually would go out with our lieutenant governor in the different communities, going up and down the state and reaching out to the different populations, in particular our seniors. But I can tell you that I've been to more homegoings for young people than I have for seniors. And so what we need to do is figure out how we're working to ensure that our seniors are helping with our children. And what does that mean? Our seniors are a wealth of knowledge. They have so much to offer. And so I was a caregiver for my aunt up until her untimely demise last July 2nd. And in so doing, we kept her home. We didn't put her in a home. We kept her in her home and took excellent care of her. Everyone doesn't have that luxury. But when you do, please take advantage of that. Let your loved ones know that they matter to you.
This is another issue, I think, that highlights the need for us to think at the big picture level, right? The 30,000-foot level, because making changes in our current ecosystem to help seniors and those aging in Delaware is going to be about workforce and vocational training and making sure that there are well-paying jobs and that our contracts for our state, when our state is paying for that, are well-funded and equal to the rates that individuals could seek jobs in other places. It's about empowering seniors to be in places where they feel most comfortable, where they can be with their families and live out their lives to their fullest. It's also about safety for those seniors who are in assisted living facilities or in retirement homes, and ensuring that we are standing up for them because they are the most vulnerable. This is an area, and I give credit where credit is due to my colleague Senator Mansavinos and Representative Kendra Johnson, who have continued to push this issue, to have been champions, and it has been a pleasure to support them and to watch them work.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure to serve on the workforce, the task force with them for both aging in place and then later long-term care and assisted living. I was a caregiver for my mother for 8 to 9 years as she progressed from dementia into Alzheimer's. But I also live in the gray wave in Sussex County, where we've had many people that have moved in to the area to retire and to actually age out here. And we have some very difficult things because, number one, we lack the infrastructure in Delaware for medical care for them. Getting access to physicians and many specialties they need are not there. The second thing we lack is transportation for them. One of the worst things, though, that they face, and it happened during COVID, was that isolation. I sit on the board for Cheer Community Services, which takes care of senior services throughout Sussex County. We're faced with so many challenges and needs that they have. A place to just come and join for communion or fellowship, but also a place where you can get help and answers, whether it be exploitation or other things. So we need to continue the work, and we need to invest. People are willing to invest in children, but forget their seniors.
Thank you. Two things before we move on to the next question. One, I would like to recognize the civility of this group of folks here today. Thank you very much for keeping this clean. We've had a very tough weekend.
We actually like each other.
Yeah. We've had a very tough weekend as a country. We've seen where a lack of civility, where it takes you, what it causes people to do. So thank you very much for that. And I'd like to thank the audience. As you see me flipping back and forth, these are great questions, as I told you all. Like, these are really good questions. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting the right one and keeping it timely, okay? But I think these two are, I think that you're gonna like them, okay? Our future as a state is education of our children, right? That's our future as a state. Testing isn't everything, but how are we going to help our public schools improve their reading, math skills, and critical thinking? I want to add to that, as legislators, I think what went on with the Christina School District earlier this week, or last week, was absolutely ridiculous. I think some of it had to do, and this is just Kerwin's opinion, had to do with just these things here. If the test scores were high, if the students were doing well, if they were knocking it out of the park, I don't think we would have had that display, right? That's just me. It's my opinion. But they weren't, so we had it. So asking that question, what are your intentions to, we really have to redefine education now more than ever. From an economic standpoint, also from just getting our kids, I mean, Delaware isn't doing well. I'm not gonna quote you on what our ranking is, but we are not doing well at all. And we did at once upon a time. We had strong districts, we had strong ideas. We need to go and rethink this thing and really begin to put actions, not 10 years from now, not 5 years from now, in September. We need to make some changes. So our question is, what are your changes that you would like to see, that you would like to make, some things that you're gonna do on day one? But I'm also asking, I'm sorry, this is a long-winded question, but I'm also asking, because you're legislators, right? If things don't go well with the election, you still have the voice to make things happen. And you have done that for years upon years, and I thank you for your service. But what are some things that you want to do all in there?
Thank you. I will begin because I think we've all sort of had some interviews with DSEA, and in preparation from that and talking, I think one of the biggest challenges we have right now in our school system is disruptive and distracting students and teachers that feel undervalued. And teachers want to teach, and I believe students want to learn. But we have some elements that are happening that are preventing that. So I think authentic discussion, and I know a former colleague and teacher, Sheree Moore, and I used to talk about, we need to sit down because we need to get back to the science of learning. There's so many things that go on in the community, and everybody thinks the school should settle all those problems. Some of those things are best settled in other venues. The school cannot take care of everything, and our teachers aren't always equipped. They should be focused on the elements of learning and offering support, and just assume that every child in school has a trauma issue in the background, because underlying most all of them do. But finally, let's look at attendance. Kids can't learn if they're not in school. Wilmington has one of the highest absentee rates of students in the state. We need to know why. What's the underlying reason why they can't get in school to learn?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. As the parent of a rising kindergartner and a rising second grader in the public school district up in Brandywine School District, I live this daily. I think about what the outcomes may be for my children and their peers, and I think about what my actions in these roles can do to affect positive change. I think there are a couple things. I agree with many of the things you stated about absenteeism. I also, in addition to increasing our critical learning and our math skills and our reading scores, let's talk about preparedness to enter the workforce or for higher education. Let's talk about the ability to self-regulate. Let's talk about the ability for children to leave our school system prepared for everything the world will throw at them, because we know it's increasingly difficult. I'm interested in investing in high-intensity tutoring. I'm interested in student-focused solutions. I'm interested in making sure that we supplement the work that's being done in schools with student-based health centers that include behavioral and mental health. And I'm interested in making sure that kids have the opportunities like my kids do. They go to a Title I school. They get meals every day. Why are we not feeding every single student every day here in Delaware?
A hungry child can't learn, hence why I sponsored House Bill 263. There are only 3 school districts that cover meals in the state of Delaware: Colonial, Capital, and Christina. All the others do not cover meals. So if a parent has an outstanding meal bill, not the child, if the parent has an outstanding meal bill, the child is penalized and cannot participate in extracurricular activities, including homecoming, prom, band, volleyball, basketball. So House Bill 263 eliminates that practice. We're talking about schools. Education it can be fun. I created a vertical farm in the Bayard School, the first of its kind in a city school. If we have cancer clusters, we can have healthy clusters in this state. And so our children are now learning to grow the foods that they can eat and take home. We're shifting the mindset of our children in the families. So figure out ways that we can work together and deal with the social emotional issues. We can use agriculture, the #1 industry in the state.
And we could pay our teachers more. I think that could be a good idea. I think we could pay our teachers more. I really do. And that way we get the best teachers and kind of help this cycle move forward. But we can't forget them. I understand that it's tough in the classrooms. I do. I come from a family of educators, and I couldn't follow in my family's footsteps. I just couldn't do it. But I hope that you will take this all back to Dover and really come up with a solution for our education, because it worries me a great deal.
If I can, just a small rebuttal or to add on to that. You can't pay teachers if you're not funding the districts, and there's a tremendous inequity in how our schools are funded. And your zip code should not determine the quality of your education.
Hear, hear.
If you're in an area that has the ability to increase the state salary by local supplement, then you can attract and retain better teachers. But every district can't do that. Many districts can't pass referendum. So this is where the state has to look at our funding mechanism and our funding forum and quit having one group and task force that do nothing. We need to find a solution to fund the schools equally and equitably.
I was just instructed that I can keep asking questions. I'm sorry. I didn't see you, ma'am.
I live in a district that is underfunded. And one of the things that happens in the district that's underfunded, a lot of violence. Because what happens is our children find themselves fighting each other over the lack of resources. Our children are worth more than crumbs from the master's table. It's a whole pie. Everyone should be eating from the same pie. And so we do need to figure out our new metric system. We need to figure out how we're funding our schools properly. And no child should go home hungry, and no child should be hungry at school. And we do need to ensure that we are paying our educators what they're worth.
Yes.
I just want to highlight again the ways in which so many of the topics that we've talked about today are affecting each other. We talked about housing. Many of you may have heard that in the city of Rehoboth, they have to have a town manager living in the town, and so they gave them a housing stipend of $750,000. there are teachers who have to teach in that community too, and what are we doing for them? And so I think we need to understand both salary and elevation of benefits and other ways that we can keep and retain amazing educators. So thank you for the moment.
Would you care to rebut?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I think we went a little bit over. We can move into closing remarks. Thank you again very much for all of your comments. I would like to thank the audience again for their great questions. Yes, please, great questions. What I promised to do is to lay these questions out as we did for the gubernatorial debate for you all to see and record. Again, as I urged to the candidates there and I urge to you tonight, these are the questions of your constituents. These are the ones that I would really take a look at because there's some great ones here and we just didn't give them all justice. There are, I would say, about 3 or 4 here that are great questions, which would have been your next question in regards to reentry. So reentry programs, reentry programs and voting rights for folks that are coming, that were previously incarcerated. What is your idea in regards to that? How can we, I want to say, reactivate, reinstate those voting rights? So take a look at these questions and please come up and afterwards and meet the candidate and ask that question directly. So now we're going into closing remarks and it will be 90 seconds for each closing remark. But again, thank you for your civility, thank you for your time, and good luck in the election. We'll start with you. Go for it.
A special thank you to all of the community partners, Reverend Dr. Bullock, the Canaan Baptist Church, Coalition of 100 Black Women, Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League. I'm making sure I'm not missing anyone. A. Philip Randolph, my good friend, Dr. Nikisha Bailey. Make sure 100 Black Men. Make sure we get everybody. DETV, and MPH. Oh, and MPHC. Oh, duh. You've heard a lot this evening. It's going to take courageous and innovative. It's going to take a courageous and innovative leader to be the next lieutenant governor, to implement what needs to happen. I'm going to share with you that I am 10 toes down in this race. I retired from being a state representative so that I could pursue this full time, becoming the next lieutenant governor. I don't have one foot in one race and one foot in another. I'm seeking to become your next lieutenant governor. I'm excited about this opportunity. I do believe that I am the most qualified and uniquely qualified for such a time as this. You're welcome to go to the website, SherryDorseyWalker.com, to learn more about me, to make a donation, hallelujah, to join the mailing list. But I'll leave you with this. We have an opportunity to rise to unify. Please vote September 10th, Sherry Dorsey Walker for your next lieutenant governor. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will echo my colleagues' comments and thanking all the organizers and everyone that spent the time here tonight. Engagement is key. It's why I work on voting rights issues, because we are better when we engage, we are better when we vote, and we are better when our representatives do the will of the people. I'm running for lieutenant governor to continue to elevate all of the ideas that we have talked about tonight. But I want to take a quick moment, something we weren't able to talk about, which is reproductive justice. This is a critical election for those of us who believe in a women's right to choose. And I have been proud to support legislation at the state level to not only increase rights, but increase access. And I hope that that matters to you as much as it matters to me and others this election cycle. I am running for lieutenant governor because I believe what's possible. And I believe I have demonstrated through my work, through working with my community and communities across this state, what is possible when we all come to the table, when we focus on innovative ideas, when we follow the data and we follow the voices of the people to secure the types of changes, not just bill by bill, person by person, but the large changes that our time demands. We are at a critical time in our state where some of the institutions that we know and love, like our educational system, need help. They need leadership. And I'm prepared to deliver that leadership as your Lieutenant Governor, working in collaboration with the legislature and the governor to deliver results on behalf of all Delawareans. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My many thanks to you tonight for coming out and trying to learn more about the person behind the name that's the actual candidate that wants to be your next Lieutenant Governor. Delaware is at a crossroads. We have the opportunity to continue down the same path that's led us to 32 years of stagnation, or we can look for the future and make some changes in that regard. I hope to be that change agent. I have demonstrated that in many different ways over the years. While many of you may not know me, I may not be a familiar face in Newcastle County. If you come south and you ask the partners that I have worked with diligently throughout the state, you'll get a very firm picture of what I stand for, what I work for. I think with you tonight, you've had the opportunity to listen to a lot of questions. When we started, I asked you to think about what's important to you. What did you hear tonight that's important to you that will help you make that decision? If you have any questions after that, follow up with us so we can tell you a little bit more than the 45 or 60 seconds that we had. I believe that my experience uniquely qualifies me to be that person, to be that servant leader that you need and deserve. When you're thinking about what your vote is going towards, think about those values that you hold dearly, those things, again, that I said that are important to you, and come back and circle back to the message that we've sent you tonight. There are many similarities, but there are also many differences. Find out what those differences are, and when you do, I think you'll support me to be Lieutenant Governor on November 5th. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Pastor Bullock is supposed to do the closing remarks, but I will tell you that he did have to leave. He's flying out. One of his best friends lost their mother, and he's flying out to funeralize his best friend's mom. So we will pray for traveling mercies for our pastor as he travels. So you get me, you get Nikisha. So thank you all for coming out. I also want to thank all of everybody that came out to make this successful. One of my best friends, Ken Briscoe, A6 Media, who makes sure that we live stream on Facebook and YouTube, always standing in the gap for me. The Canaan staff, Alan's out there, Deb was here. Our security, making sure that we're safe. Sabrina on our AV to make sure that obviously you can hear us on the microphones. And I want to thank everybody that came out. Do we have any clergy here? If any clergy's here, please stand so we can acknowledge any clergy. Okay, amen. And anybody running for any other office than Lieutenant Governor, if you're here, just please stand. Thank you for coming out. Thank you so much for coming out. And to the most important man, Mike Jones, you got this air conditioning working like it ain't never worked before. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But seriously, it is so important. We had a great night. We had a great turnout. We learned so much. I am so impressed by this panel of women. If you don't know, every person running for Lieutenant Governor this year is a woman. This is an all-female ballot for Lieutenant Governor. Y'all impressed me so much tonight. I am so godly proud just to stand on this stage with you. Thank you. I learned so much. I hope you all learned as much as I did, but that would not mean anything if we did not go out and vote. To Joel, Chair of Urban League, thank you for putting up with Jen and Kobe and me on our Zooms. For Jennifer and Kobe, it's just so awesome to work with y'all. This is what happens when people don't worry about who gets the credit and just worry about getting the job done. So thank you. Be safe. It's hot out there. Pray for our people who don't have access to cool homes. Pray for people who don't have access to food. And pray for our children. They need us to stand in the gap for them. Thank you. Good night. Be safe.